Don. Got it. Okay, recording is in progress. Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. We're going to begin with some prayers. This is our illumination of the intent class, in case someone is up there that I didn't see. Sometimes people pop in by mistake. So we're going to begin with the taking of refuge and generating bodhicitta. And you know this prayer that many say was composed by Atisha. Sangye churang soki chognam la, jangchu badu dagni kapsuchi, dagi chunin gipe sognam ki, drola pencher sangye drupa shog. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. See if you can actualize that in your mind. When you take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the main thing is to take refuge in the Dharma, which doesn't mean Dharma texts necessarily. It means the realizations that protect you from suffering, realizing impermanence, having an understanding, an insight into renunciation, and bodhicitta, and compassion, and emptiness, and so forth. Then mandala offering. Sashipuki chukshing meto tramri rablingji nidegyan padi Sangye shingdu mikte uargi chokun yatnam dakshing la chupasho. You can kind of think of that as offering our entire solar system multiplied many times, the sun, the moon, and so forth, sort of including all of the things, including the God realms. So it has all the delicious food of the gods and all your favorite foods and possessions, everything transformed into a Buddha realm, offering to the omniscient mind. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. So think that you're offering this also, particularly to request the teachings. Idam guru rana mandalakam niryatayami. Okay. So we're going to begin with a little meditation to calm our minds and to try to set, a special motivation. So sit comfortably, move your legs. Doris, don't sit in cross-leg position. You can sit in Maitreya's position. Maitreya is sitting on a throne, so his legs are down. That's symbolic of being ready to enter into the world immediately. So like Tara has one leg tucked in and one leg extended generally. Sometimes it's the other leg in the wrathful Taras, but that's kind of means that she's in meditative equipoise, but she's also active in the world. Maitreya is like all in there, right? So sit comfortably, relax your body. Relax your mind. Let go of focusing on pain or thoughts of plans, things that you were thinking about. Remember that there's nothing else you have to do right now. Focus on your respiration. Once you recognize it, hold it in mindfulness to the exclusion of everything else. Squeezing your attention doesn't mean squeezing your body, it just means tightening up your awareness, letting go of other thoughts so that your mental energy is not spread over watching, being mindful of your breathing along with other things. So investing that energy back into the mindfulness of the breathing. Here and in the subsequent meditation on the clear light nature of the mind, you might say the Mahamudra meditation, what we're trying to do is to reach a neutral state of mind, getting rid of any worldly thoughts, worries, so forth, and then eventually replacing that neutral state with a virtuous state by thinking of these various points that are mentioned in our motivation. So now bring your attention to the mental consciousness. Focus on it. You recognize it through its contents, the thoughts. Your hand does not think, your eyes do not think. It's your mental consciousness that thinks and has plans and memories. Although in modern parlance, people talk about muscle memory or something like that. That's not actual. If it's in the muscles, it's not the actual memory. Try to see the clear light nature between the thoughts. You focus on that spaciousness. If it's broken, if it's interrupted by thoughts entering, go back and let go of those thoughts. Try to intuit, to have an intuition of the clear light nature of the mind within which those thoughts are rising. This is a more subtle object than the respiration. So if you are observant, you may notice that your own respiration has slowed down even more when you can string together a continuum of moments of watching that clear light nature, because it's more subtle, your mind is more focused. This clear light nature is the absence of any obstruction within the mind to the arisal or absorption of thoughts into the mind and back, absorbing into the mind itself. The emotions don't go anywhere. The images don't go anywhere. Like clouds on a summer day that are evaporated by the sun, sort of the moisture absorbing back into the air. Like that, the thoughts absorb back into the nature of consciousness. And recognizing what this means, this is our Buddha potential, our conventional Buddha nature. The fact that we can develop into a Buddha, we can eliminate all the faults. We can develop within this mind all of the good qualities. There's nothing inferior about our nature. We all sentient beings share this same nature of mind, conventional nature of mind. Of course, we all share the emptiness of the mind also. That's called the not abiding Buddha nature or ultimate Buddha nature. This is the conventional Buddha nature. Feeling some joy, happiness, that remembering that we have this ability, that we can overcome our faults, and that this recognition is due to the fact that we have a human life right now, a life of leisure and endowment, an auspicious moment, which has come about from the efforts of our previous reincarnations, our previous lives, when we created merit that brought about this auspicious moment. Of course, we also had aspirations to be able to help others and use it for their sake. Knowing that this auspicious moment has great meaning, great potential. Unlike ordinary beings who would like to achieve the so-called American dream of becoming rich and famous and powerful, this life has the potential of practicing the Dharma continuously by taking vows, for instance. So when you take vows, you're continually creating virtuous karma if you keep them. It has this life of leisure and endowment offers us the opportunity of listening to the teachings of the Buddha, contemplating them, meditating on them, making realizations, overcoming our faults, developing renunciation, compassion, bodhicitta, the right view of emptiness. And it has the potential of being a basis for achieving liberation, nirvana, or enlightenment this very lifetime. We have all of the equipment we need. We don't need a bigger bank account. better house, better food before we begin practicing the Dharma. We don't need bone malas, bone rosaries in order to practice Tantra. We don't need to go to the store and buy all of these things. But the other ingredient is that we have to practice with respect to is sentient beings. All other living beings are in exactly the same situation as we. They want to be happy and they want to be free of suffering. We have that equality with them. They've all been our best friend, our mother, numberless times in the past, and have bestowed upon us depthless kindness in giving birth to us when they were our mothers, protecting us, giving us enjoyments, teaching us. We all owe an inestimable debt to them. It would be heartless for us to achieve our own quietude, our own inner bliss, ignoring their plight. So taking them as a focus, sentient beings, thinking how wonderful it would be if I could remove them from suffering, place them in stable, everlasting happiness. I can't do that right now. I have trouble helping myself. To be able to do that, I have to make realizations of the path. In fact, to really help perfectly all beings, including beings that are about to become arhats, those bodhisattvas that are about to become enlightened, to be able to help them, we ourselves have to be enlightened. To do that, I have to accumulate the collections of merit and wisdom that give rise to the substantial causes of our form body, our future form body as a Buddha, and our Dharma body. We already have the substantial cause. Our present mind continuum becomes the Dharmakaya, and our present subtlemost wind becomes the form body, the Rupakaya of the Buddha. But I need to accumulate merit and wisdom. To do that, I need to know how, which is explained in Chandrakirti's entry into the middle way and Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on it, illuminating the intention. So I think I'm going to listen, contemplate, weigh in my mind the various facets of the talk today and meditate on it when something becomes clear, even if it's just for a few moments, leaving an imprint in our mind. For the sake of becoming enlightened, for the sake of all sentient beings, I'm going to participate today in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. That's our causal motivation. And then bring your attention back to the present. Hi, those who have joined, Richard, Katie, Suvansh, good to see you again. John, Annie, Karen and David back from a nice retreat. Snehi's here for a while. She has to go off to prepare for the visit of Kandrula. Is that right, Snehi? When is she going to be teaching?
On Sakadava, June 4th.
Oh, Andrew. Oh, okay. I thought because you had mentioned in some messages that you were celebrating today also as Vesak. You know, today,
Yesterday.
oh,
Yesterday,
yesterday, right. So, yeah, some centers are celebrating today because people have Saturday off. So Vesak, you know, is the name of Vishaka in Sanskrit is the name of this of the fourth lunar month, and different traditions celebrate it sometimes a month apart because of the difference in the lunar calendars that they use. So the Tibetan tradition, it will be on June 4th. So good to see all of you. And hello, Rachel, Sean, and 917, whatever it is. So any questions? I see Shanka already has his question hand up or comment.
Yeah, this is regarding the meditation, and I've thought about this before, and I'm haven't been able to resolve this. So maybe I'm sure it's a confusion on my part. But when you do the meditation, you speak about the clear light nature, focusing on the clear light nature of mind, which is the object in Mahamudra meditation and the space, the space meditation, right? And then later you speak about how it's the conventional nature of mind, which is what it seems like what you're doing. So what am I missing?
So clear light can mean two things. It can refer to the conventional clear light nature, or it can refer to the ultimate clear light nature. The ultimate clear light nature of the mind the ultimate clear light nature is emptiness. So we're here at the beginning, as we don't yet have a deep insight into emptiness. Maybe we have some understanding of it. We're focusing on the conventional clear light nature in a progression that will lead us eventually to realize the ultimate clear light nature of the mind, which is emptiness. So in one sense, they have a similar aspect of just vacuity, but the vacuity that we're trying to perceive right now is induced by a logic that is based on the conventional clear light nature of the mind, the fact that it doesn't obstruct thoughts in the mind. It doesn't obstruct the arisal of thoughts and concepts and feelings. It doesn't obstruct their removal. Eventually, when we have a sense of the vacuity of the mind that is induced by the logic that establishes emptiness, and to a certain extent, a similar kind of aspect, just vacuity, a non-affirming negation, but that will be an insight that has more power for our mind. So the Mahamudra meditation, as we in the Gelugpa tradition, as we recognize it, leads in that progression. First, developing an understanding of the conventional clear light nature of the mind, using that to focus our attention and developing tranquil abiding on the basis of that. And then once tranquil abiding is achieved, to use that as a basis to develop penetrative insight on the emptiness of the mind, to analyze the emptiness of the mind, which will be familiar to us by then because we've already had a similar aspect. And then to use that to realize the emptiness of the mind. That's still within the Sutra Mahamudra. And Tantra Mahamudra goes beyond that to try to utilize the subtlemost mind that we can sort of recognize through the various practices in Tantra, Tumo and Vajra recitation and Dzogchen and so forth.
Sorry, follow-up question. So still sticking with the Sutra Mahamudra. So I'm just trying to remember the terms that I've heard before. So the conventional clear light nature of mind that you're speaking about, that's the meditation where you take the object as the as the space-like nature of mind, right? So that's like the vastness, the non-obstructiveness, and so forth and so on.
When you say space-like nature, actually emptiness is space-like nature also, because we talk about space-like emptiness.
Right. So that gets to my second.
Yeah.
So that gets to my second one, which is also in the Sutra Mahamudra. When you talk about the higher one, which is imbued with emptiness, right? Where you're looking at the emptiness of the mind.
Right.
That's the one that's called the space-like meditation, correct?
Well, they're both space-like meditations.
Right, but I prefer.
Yeah, just wait. Just to be precise, that's called the space-like meditation on emptiness.
Okay, right. Yes, okay, got it.
Space-like meditation, you could be referring to the meditation on the conventional clear light.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Yes, that's
okay. So you all should be experts on that by now, because we've gone over that with so many questions. I hope you've honed your your understanding of that. So, John, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Venerable George. This is really a follow-up question. I hope not redundant for everybody here, but why is the meditation on the ultimate clear light nature of mind referred to as non-abiding? I'm sorry, the practice is not referred to as non-abiding, but the emptiness of mind, the ultimate emptiness, is referred to as non-abiding Buddha nature.
Right.
Why is that?
In one sense, you are not abiding in cyclic existence. You're not abiding in adherence to conventional appearances. Even when you're meditating on the conventional clear light nature of the mind, there can still be present the grasping to true existence. So, in one sense, you're not abiding in the usual that we've had since beginningless time, grasping to inherent existence. When you have when you're recognizing emptiness, so that the emptiness of the mind is called the non-abiding Buddha nature. So I'm not sure if in some situations you say the emptiness of the tree or the car is called non-abiding, but generally, if you meditate on the emptiness of that, but generally we talk about the non-abiding Buddha nature as the ultimate Buddha nature as the meditation, direct realization of the emptiness of the mind. Or let's say, it's not just the meditation. The non-abiding Buddha nature is the fact that we have emptiness as the nature of our mind right now.
Thank you.
That allows you, by recognizing it, not to abide in grasping at inherent existence and not to abide in cyclic existence. Okay, so how are we doing? Anyone else have some question from before? Have any of you read ahead? Who put your hand up if you've read ahead? Not many. Okay, Toby, good. Okay, proud of you. Those who have not, it's very, very useful and important to read a little bit ahead, so that you can have some doubts about the material, and they may be clarified by our discussion. Otherwise, it's just like hearing it for the very first time. So usually when the students receive teachings at the monasteries, they have read the material. It's not as though they're hearing it for the very first time. Well, they may be hearing it for the first time, but they've read it before, and they may have doubts, and those doubts may be clarified during the presentation of the material. Okay. So, Katie, I'm glad to see your cat is there hearing something about emptiness. There may be some influence.
It's my daughter's cat. I'm visiting my daughter, hence a little interruption with the cat. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So We're going to start from page, let's see what it is here. In Jimpa's book, if you have the hardbound edition, it's page 130. In Hopkins' edition, as Don reminded me last time, page 205 in Jeffrey Hopkins' book. And this is talking about the qualities of the ground, comma, the attributes, if you're searching for it in a digital edition. We're on the third ground, the third mind generation. You could say the third chapter, if you want. Generally, the Madhyamaka Vatara auto commentary is divided into the 10 mind generations. And then, because the 10th one would be the path of no more learning, Buddhahood, and then some other final things about concluding remarks. So the qualities of the ground, the attributes, this is 4 parts. Showing how forbearance, or we could say patience, or patient acceptance, however you want to translate the Tibetan word sopa, like Lama sopa, showing how forbearance is superior on this ground, or how, as Jeffrey puts it, is surpassing. So in each of the grounds, there is one particular perfection that you have a special superiority in, or surpassing practice of. So on this ground, the surpassing practice is on patience. It doesn't mean that you don't have the other practices, but this one is specially sensitive here, especially special. Then 2, how to cultivate other types of patience, forbearance. 3, the divisions of the perfection of patience, perfection of forbearance, and the other pure qualities that arise on this ground. That's the 4th outline. Have you heard, in reading other texts, what are other ways that people translate patience? I said patience, forbearance, patient acceptance. John, have you heard?
Yeah, there's tolerance, which is a
tolerance, right?
Which is has a weird semantic connection in English, but it's part of it seems like kshanti. In Sanskrit, that is a good one for kshanti, it seems.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because the Sanskrit word for patience or tolerance, whatever, is shanti, not SHKSHANTI, right, John?
Yeah.
Shanti. Karen, were you going to provide another possible translation you're saying? Okay,
I was going to say tolerance.
Tolerance, okay. So you can, yeah, we can say you tolerate the pain. It doesn't work with all of the divisions. Some of the translations work with better with some of the divisions of patience than with others. Okay, so first outline, showing how forbearance is superior on this ground, showing how patience is surpassing. So the text reads, the lines, were a disturbed person, ... that refers to this verse number 2 that's right below that in your text. Were a disturbed person to slice flesh from the bones of the body of a bodhisattva, though he be innocent, cutting it off ounce by ounce over a prolonged period, this will serve to increase his or her patience, forbearance toward the torturer. So this is actually, Lama Tsongkhapa's text just says, with regard to if, galte, which is the first thing, Jimba translates it here, were a disturbed person. So these lines present the way that the perfection of forbearance comes to be superior for this bodhisattva who has attained the light of gnosis, right? Remember we talked about before this kind of copper-colored light that presages deeper kind of wisdom that's coming on. So that was one of the attributes that's talked about before. Now, what's the particular quality? This ability to be tolerant, to be patient, to forbear various things. And the example is given of if a disturbed person were to slice flesh from the bones of the body of a bodhisattva, though he be innocent. Jeffrey translates it as, though another unjustifiably disturbed by anger cuts from his body flesh and bones. So the Tibetan is actually saying namin. Ne means sort of like a place. Min means not a place. So it's not a place, not a justifiable place to to be angry with. So, or as Jimpa just translated, as innocent. I've never seen namin as translated, but innocent, but that you get the idea. So if someone is angry with you unjustifiably, you haven't done anything, and that person were to cut your flesh, not just once, but like small pieces of it again and again. This reminds me of these torturing movies, like on in the movies and so forth, where the person comes in with a scalpel and they're cutting off little pieces, even down to the bone, and not just one, many pieces, again and again over a prolonged period of time. It really sounds like what people talk about torture, right? For the bodhisattva on the third ground, this doesn't become a problem. In fact, it increases their patience toward the torturer. How does it do? How does it increase the patience? Well, because they've already realized emptiness, and because they take into account the negative karma that the torturer, the cutter, if you want, is creating. They're creating an enormous negative karma. Like if you see in politics today, some of the outrageous things that are being done, you can, if you kind of get angry, you might be beginning to get angry at the politicians who are saying these absurd things. But if you recognize the negative karma that they're creating, you can develop, recognizing out of your compassion that they're going to suffer in the future, you can be tolerant. You can tolerate these outrages without yourself getting upset. Okay, makes sense so far? Okay, so since the bodhisattva already possesses optimal excellence in generosity, or as Jeffrey says, since surpassing giving and ethics, which were explained earlier, are possessed on this higher ground, here from among the remaining 8 perfections, patience is surpassing. Or as Jimpa says, since the bodhisattva already possesses optimal excellence in generosity and morality, they had that on the first and second ground, they already have that, as described above. Here from among the 8 remaining perfections, forbearance comes to be superior or surpassing for them. So what does it mean from the remaining 8? What does that mean? Suvash? No? You haven't read. So Rachel, what do you think? That's easy, right?
So this being patience would be one of them. So patience.
No.
The remaining 8 after generosity and morality would include
Right. So
patience, effort, or joyous effort, concentration, wisdom, method, wishes, power, and exalted wisdom.
right. So taking away those that you've already developed the surpassing practice of in the first 2 bhumis, there are 8 left. So of those 8, patience is the one that's surpassing here. The bodhisattva of the third ground is characterized here as being innocent, or how does Jeffrey say, an unjustified object of anger. The bodhisattva, this third ground, is characterized here as being innocent, an inappropriate or unjustified object for anger, because he or she guards others' minds. Maybe nowadays I have to say he, she, or some people don't identify as male or female, right? Okay, so the bodhisattva of the third ground is characterized here as being innocent, an inappropriate object for anger, because they guard others' minds. They're not in. They don't go around harming others. On the third bhumis, they've already been practicing morality, ethics, so they restrain from harming others. It's only some kind of crazy person that gets it into their mind that this person deserves to be harmed, because they possess pacifying gnosis, as described in the lines, the fire burning off all fuels of knowable objects. What was that from? Remember what that was? That was from the first stanza of this third bhumi, where it talked about because the light of the fire wholly consuming the fuel of objects of knowledge arises. Okay. So, and because he or she does not exhibit with his body, speech, or mind such concerns as he harmed me and my kin in the past. That's one concern. He is causing harm now, or the suspicion or the thought that they might harm in the future, which fuel antipathy toward others. So what this is referring to is the three causes of hostility. Generally, we talk about this. We've mentioned this in some of our previous classes. So one of the thoughts is that person is harming me now, or harming me or my family now, my friends, my political party, or whatever. Your side. You're being harmed now, or they did it in the past. I remember. I think I told you. I remember being in New York once when the Wimbledon was going on, and I was at the apartment of one of the directors of a center in New York, and I was trying to find the tennis, and I came upon this channel. I think it was an Israeli guy vowing retribution against certain other Israelis because they had harmed his family in the past, right? People hold on to these kind of grudges. They harmed me or my family or my nation in the past, or the thought that they might harm in the future. The other country is getting more powerful, so you might have antipathy, anger toward them. Makes sense so far, right? No problem. Though this is so, were a person who is disturbed from within, I'm not sure why Jimpa says from within. It just means that in their mind is angry, so as their mind is within, maybe. Though this is so the bodhisattva does not have any kind of problem. It hasn't caused any problem. If this person who is disturbed not only slices flesh, but to do so from the bones of the body of a bodhisattva, not in large portions. Slabs, he says, it sounds like flesh, right? Slabs of flesh, not in large slabs, not in large portions, but cutting off an ounce, just little portion by portion, little bits, making it more gruesome, right? Doesn't do it all at once. He does it so that it's prolonged. And this too, not in one go, but over a prolonged period, pausing regularly so that the cutting is not completed quickly, the bodhisattva will not experience any vexation toward the torturer. What does he translate here? Chupa mi jungwa in Tibetan. He doesn't develop any kind of disturbance of his mind, the bodhisattva, toward the torturer, or as Jimpa says, vexation. In fact, this will serve to increase the bodhisattva's patience toward that person, their forbearance toward that person, or their tolerance of that person's activities. And the bodhisattva will direct their focus on the sufferings of the hells and so on that the person who is torturing them will undergo because of that negative karma, suffering that is graver than any other type of similar suffering. Right? Makes sense? Why is that person going to experience graver suffering? Well, because the third ground bodhisattva is a holy object, right? When we create negative karma with someone who is a bodhisattva, wow. And not only a bodhisattva, an ultimate bodhisattva, someone who is an Arya being. So the third ground, he's already been an Arya being for a long time. The karmic consequences of that are much heavier or much graver. This is how the bodhisattva comes to excel in forbearance. So 2 factors. They see the whole thing as devoid of inherently existent torturer, inherently existent me, inherently existent knife or process of cutting. That's one thing. So they're patient, but also they recognize the suffering that the torturer is going to experience in the future, and out of compassion that keeps their mind peaceful. It keeps their mind from reacting violently, right, with anger and so forth. So they're patient. Make sense? Okay. Now, on the first 2 grounds, such as the joyous, or Jim has translated perfect joy, that's the name of the first ground, there is no disturbance within their mental continuum, the bodhisattva's mental continuum, in response to having their body cut. But it's said that that bodhisattva on the first or second ground has not gained quite this level of mastery in forbearance and patience. They are patient, but this is like something over the top. This bodhisattva is able to experience, with extreme situations like this. You know, the Jataka tale of the bodhisattva. When we say the bodhisattva, this in parentheses means the previous lives of Buddha, when he was living in the forest and on the third bhumi, practicing patience, practicing forbearance, and a king and his haram, what do we say in English? Haram, his consorts were in the forest enjoying, and the king had fallen asleep. His consorts had come around investigating in the forest. They'd seen the bodhisattva sitting majestically, almost glowing, and their hearts were aflutter, and they were watching with gladness in their eyes. The king comes, looks for them, finds them, and is upset that they are finding the bodhisattva pleasant to watch, right? You know this story? Anyone have read this? You haven't heard this? Okay. Shanka has. Okay. So the king, out of anger, comes and tries to, take it out on the bodhisattva. He cuts off his ear, cuts off his other ear, cuts off his nose, his tongue, different parts of his body, trying to get a response, kind of, like as though the Bodhisattva would be begging for mercy from his powerful presence, right? The Bodhisattva remained totally the previous life of Shakyamuni, when he was a Bodhisattva, completely patient, tolerant, not showing any sign of suffering from that point of view, maybe the emptiness, and being tolerant of this from the point of view of having, recognizing the suffering that the king was creating. Until the king finally lopped off his head at the end. He cut off his arms, his finger, everything slowly, fingers, toes, everything. Never, the Bodhisattva never developed any kind of antipathy, any kind of anger, only was in a compassionate state. Okay, so the next verse says, for a Bodhisattva who sees selflessness, who cuts what? That means like the agent doesn't, what agent, what inherently existent cutter is cutting what? Me. I'm not inherently existent. At what point in time, in what manner, he sees all phenomena as images in a mirror, as reflections. That means all conventional phenomena, right? And seeing thus, he too will have such forbearance. Or as Jeffrey translates, also through viewing these phenomena as like reflections. What Bodhisattva, seeing selflessness, is cut by whom, just how, and when? Seeing them like reflections, seeing them as empty of inherent existence, he has patience. Make sense? Anyone have doubt? Snehi, yeah, what do you think?
I was wondering, this ties into something you had said a couple of classes ago about how from the first bhumi onwards, bodhisattvas like have a mental body.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't feel the pain.
Right.
Is that
so
part of the forbearance?
Yeah, so this third bhumi bodhisattva also still has, a mental body. And remember, there are various interpretations, whether they also have a physical body or only a mental body. There's some debate, in Uttara Tantra and other texts. So if he does still have a physical body, but has a mental body also, they would feel some physical pain, but their mind would be at ease. If they only have a mental body, they don't have any physical pain whatsoever. But just the, the indignity of this, if you were to say they were only had a mental body, right? So they're not feeling any physical pain, just the indignity of this and the tiresomeness of this, the Bodhisattva would be patient with. Shanka, what are you thinking?
I mean, this is a somewhat unrelated question, but this question has come up in my mind various times about various things that are unclear. In other words, like you mentioned, that it's still somewhat under debate whether or not a bodhisattva has only a mental body or also has a physical body. Now, my question is, we've had many bodhisattvas before and after and now. Why are we still debating? Shouldn't it be clear to those bodhisattvas whether they have mental bodies or physical, and should just tell us? I mean, I don't understand why we are still arguing about debating about these things, right?
Okay,
I mean,
so the Buddha didn't definitively say one way or the other. So generally, when the Buddha is given teachings, other bodhisattvas who are asked questions, they're not going to necessarily contradict or not to say contradict. They're not necessarily going to elucidate. They may. I remember Serkon Sentra Rinpoche used to say, whatever one Buddha does not explain, other Buddhas will. So generally, we only have one person who is recognized as a Buddha at one time. So when Shakyamuni Buddha was alive, there are no other universal teachers that are called Buddha, right? And no one else other than like a Devadatta, someone whose pride and so forth got over the top, is going to try to give teachings that surpass what Shakyamuni Buddha taught. So at the present time, generally in Tibetan Buddhism, we recognize the Dalai Lama as kind of like an enlightened being. That doesn't mean that Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche or other lamas of other traditions or Sakya Chizen or so forth are not Buddhas, but they don't necessarily take that public aspect, right, to explain things that the Dalai Lama has left out. So yeah, it's kind of interesting question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's been niggling at me for a long time. I've never asked it for whatever reason.
Okay, so good. William, what are you thinking?
Well, it says, even though a first or second ground bodhisattva's mental continuum is not disturbed when his body is cut. So it seems to me, how would you know the difference? I mean, they say, well, it's said then, but the reaction is exactly the same. In other words, one is not disturbed, first and second level. Now I'm on the third level. I'm still not disturbed, but now all of a sudden I'm perfecting patience. How do I know that I'm
No, it's not that you're perfecting patience. They also have a practice. But if you have the perfection of patience, you're a Buddha. Only the Buddha has any of the perfections.
Okay.
What we have in the Bodhisattva path is we have practice of the perfections, and we have special, on some of the bhumis, on the first bhumi, you have a special practice of generosity. It's kind of like,
Okay, but my question is, the mental continuum is not disturbed up until then. The mental continuum is still not disturbed on the third level. What's the difference?
Because the third level has this deeper kind of gnosis, but particularly they have a facility in meditating on the suffering of the torturer, that the suffering that they will experience in the future. They have, because of their, let's say, on each of the bhumis, we have a surpassing practice. But there's always kind of a presaging, especially, some kind of increased ability of concentration, enthusiasm, concentration, and wisdom. Here is already mentioned about the orange glow. That's kind of a presage. Is that the right word? Presaging. It's sort of like an indication that they're going to be able to burn up the obstructions to omniscience later. They don't have that ability now, but there's some kind of thing like that. Here, they also have some special practice of concentration and enthusiasm, so they're able to concentrate on the suffering of the sentient beings more than the bodhisattva on the first and second bhumi. They just got a greater accumulation of merit and more ability.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So Sumash, good. You have some question.
Yes, Venerable George, I just have a comment. This whole discussion reminded me of something very similar that the Buddha says in the Pali Canon, where
Okay.
I know we don't have the talk about bodhisattvas. In Majjhima Nikaya number 21, which is the simile of the saw, and I'll read from here. Monks, even if bandits were to carve you up savagely, limb by limb, with a handled saw, he among you who let his heart get angered, even at that, would not be doing my bidding.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah. So the Buddha said, would not be doing my bidding. It doesn't mean that they won't get angry. He's admonishing them or suggesting to them, be patient. Otherwise, you're not following my advice. But here on the Bodhisattva path, the Bodhisattva has this particular ability, this special practice of patience. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Snehi.
Venerable George, you made the comment just now that only Buddhas have all the perfections.
Right.
Is that because for the Bodhisattvas, they do not have that because they don't yet have the omniscient mind in terms of the simultaneous realization of the two truths, that they don't have the full understanding of emptiness?
Well, they have a full understanding of emptiness, but they don't have, let's say, if you talk about what do we call paramita, right? Remember we talked about the etymology of it. I meant you can translate it as having reached the other shore, or you can talk about going to the other shore. The definitive perfection is having reached the other shore. That means, in this case, not just the other shore of nirvana, but it means having reached enlightenment. So only the Buddha has the perfections, any of the perfections. Otherwise, there are practices of the perfections on the various, when one has become a bodhisattva, even on the path of accumulation and the path of preparation, you can practice the perfections. In fact, we should try to practice from now the perfection, the practice of the perfection of generosity. We should take all of those examples and try to put them into practice. We should practice the perfection of ethics and patience and so forth. On the Arya grounds, on the bhumis, when one has become an Arya being in the first, second, third, and fourth bhumis, one has greater ability to practice those perfections. And one has a special emphasis on each of the bhumis of one of them, when that becomes surpassing for them, superior for them. But even on the 10th bhumi, one doesn't have yet any of the perfections. It's only when one becomes a Buddha that one becomes perfect in generosity, ethics and so forth, morality and so forth.
Okay. Yeah, I misunderstood because I thought that, as you were progressing through the bhumis, it meant that the Bodhisattva, now on the second bhumi, has done everything he can to practice, generosity perfectly. But you're saying that that the word paramita itself means only when you have become a Buddha could you say, I have perfected generosity.
So paramita lends to two interpretations: having
Okay.
gone to the other shore or going to.
Okay.
So you can say that they are practicing the perfections. They are going to that shore, but they haven't reached it yet, right? So they don't have the actual perfection. Okay. So for instance, when we talk about the perfection of wisdom, there it becomes very clear. Only the Buddha has the actual perfection of wisdom. although the bodhisattvas, say on the 10th level, the bodhisattva can go into meditative equipoise on emptiness and come out of it in the shortest instant of time. So they can almost see the two levels of truth at the same time, but they don't have the same wisdom of a Buddha who sees simultaneously conventional and ultimate truths. So by analogy, the Buddha has abilities to be emanate more than other bodhisattvas. So he has more perfection of generosity. He has a perfect generosity. He can give whatever is needed, whatever is possible, and so forth. So there's some fine gradations like that. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Shankar?
Yeah, follow up to Snehi's. I understand the the where you're coming from regarding the etymology, but it still doesn't explain to me why it is that the bodhisattva has not perfected patience, or why is it? They obviously still. They have removed the fetters to
There's other kinds of patience,
but they still have imprints,
there,
right?
there are other kinds of forbearance or patience. For instance, in achieving the qualities, we talk about the patience that does not retaliate. We have the patience of accepting harms and practicing the Dharma. And we have the patience of forbearance of realizing the Dharma. So only the omniscient mind has realized all dharmas perfectly. So bodhisattvas before that point still have not perfected that aspect, right? They don't have the forbearance, perfect forbearance or perfect patience of realizing the Dharma. What that means is, like right now, in studying this material, many of us are, kind of get a headache, it's like, oh man, I'm not going to understand this. This is too hard. Or to meditate on emptiness, I can do it for couple of minutes, and then I get bored, or I need to relax, or whatever. So to put up with those hardships in realizing the Dharma is part of the perfection of patience. Maybe the word forbearance works better in that, or to tolerance, to tolerate those hardships in striving to realize the Dharma. So you might think that gets into enthusiastic perseverance too, but this is the tolerance or the forbearance in practicing the Dharma. Well, it'll be coming up in the coming verses when we talk about those other divisions, but that's more or less what's being said here. Okay. So Don, did you have one question? Did I see?
I do. Is the difference between practicing on the bhumis for a bodhisattva, taking some effort, as opposed to the Buddha having it spontaneously?
Say again?
It's the difference of bodhisattva practicing on the various bhumis needs to do it with some effort, as opposed to the Buddha having it spontaneously.
Yeah, that's part of it also. The Buddha does it perfectly. So even on some of the bhumis, one has to exert more effort. There are some points along the path where things become effortless for the bodhisattvas, but not to this same, not the entirety of their endeavors. Say, for instance, even a 10th level bodhisattva has to go into meditative equipoise on emptiness in order to realize it directly and come out. So that requires, some kind of effort. Okay, let's go on. Let's go on a little bit. So this was talking about selflessness, right? This third verse. The previous verse was talking about how the bodhisattva had a special patience or forbearance by meditating on the suffering that the torturer or the irritator, the person that you might potentially get angry with is going to experience in the future. Now it's talking about this special practice from the point of view of their realization of emptiness. So Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says, not only does their forbearance come to excel on the basis of focusing on the extensive sufferings, such as those of the hells, a bodhisattva of the third ground who sees selflessness and directly perceives these three spheres, or thus, actually you can have more than three spheres, but generally, the one who cuts, so the torturer, you see them as empty of inherent existence. There's no one really to get angry at. Who is there to get angry at? The one who cuts. What is being cut? My flesh. There's no inherently existent flesh or bone, right? Or no inherently existent me. The act of cutting, the process, right? Like, for instance, when we talk about the second chapter of fundamental wisdom is the emptiness of coming and going. I think it's second chapter, right? I can't remember the fundamental wisdom. So there, it's not like just some object like the tree or the chariot or the self is empty of inherent existence, but the process of walking, coming and going. There is even processes like that are not inherently existent. So there's no process of cutting. When we do the dedication, sometimes I say the act of dedication doesn't inherently exist. It's a process, right? Trying to connect these virtues with particular results, maybe my achievement of enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. You can't find the act of dedication anywhere on that. It's just a name imputed to that process. So also cutting is just imputed upon, or the act of cutting is just imputed upon the succession of moments, the scalpel or the nail or whatever it is coming and so forth. The one who cuts, what is being cut, the act of cutting of the body. At one point in time where you cut, there's no inherently existent moment of time, and in what manner, slowly, quickly, so forth. All of these things, the bodhisattva doesn't ruminate about, right? Doesn't have elaborations of true existence or inherent existence. In fact, sees all phenomena as images in a mirror. Actually, the text doesn't say in a mirror, it just says like reflections, Zuknyan. So, when we talk about the meditation on emptiness, as was talked about at the beginning of the class, there are two kinds. Space-like meditation on emptiness, when you're in meditative equipoise, only non-affirming negation appears, no conventional phenomena. And in post-meditation, when you arise, phenomena appear, but due to the fact that you have realized emptiness directly, they already kind of shimmer. They look, even to your eye, they look kind of like illusions. I mean, to know that something is an illusion is something you do with your mental consciousness, but there's sort of like even a little bit of shimmering, like mirage. So we call that the mirage-like meditation on emptiness, in which phenomena appear to be like reflections in a mirror, right? When you see a reflection in a mirror, when you see your own face in the mirror, do you think that's your face? Richard, do you shave in the morning?
Yes, I try to at least.
I'm just joking. So when you see your own face in the mirror, I mean, I don't have a mirror. I'm in the shower and I'm just cutting all of my hair off. But when you look at yourself in the mirror, do you think that's you?
I think it's a reflection of me, but my dog looks in the mirror, and I'm pretty certain my dog thinks the reflection is another dog.
Right, exactly. Like the parakeets, right?
Mhm.
They're, getting excited and cooing and everything and
Mhm.
regurgitating seed to feed the other one or something like that. So seeing things as like reflections means that they are appearing, but you are not believing that they are the actual thing, right? That you have an understanding that they are empty of inherent existence, but they're still appearing. So that's called the post-meditation, let's say, the mirage-like meditation on emptiness. Yeah, things look like mirages. So do mirages appear? Karen, have you ever seen a mirage?
No, I don't think so, but I do think, yes, they do appear. You
Yeah,
think
you have to
see
say,
water.
so when you're driving on the highway in the summer, when almost it looks like, oh, there's water ahead and you have to put on the brakes, it turns out it's just the refraction of the sunlight. Probably most of us have seen mirages of some kind.
Yeah.
At first, we may be deceived by them. You put on the brakes, you're afraid you're going to go through this big puddle of water or something, or if you're in the desert, you may think that there's water over there. But when you investigate, you see that they are, quote, just mirages or mere mirages. That is, they appear, but they're empty of what they seemed to imply to the mind. Okay. So, in fact, the third level bodhisattva sees all phenomena as reflections or as images in a mirror. Jeffrey says, not only does the third ground bodhisattva have surpassing patience that observes the great suffering of hell beings and so forth, that third level bodhisattva also sees clearly the phenomena of the three spheres as like reflections. Because the three by whom the body is of the bodhisattva is seeing selflessness is cut, what is cut, in what manner, and at what time are vividly seen in this way. And because he does not discriminate falsely about I and mine, the bodhisattva will be patient. So that next sentence comes here in Jimpa's translation. Free of acquired conceptions of I and mine, too, the bodhisattva will have such forbearance when facing harm. Okay. So you remember the story I told of Gomshin Kapala, the great meditator who was supposed to be the reincarnation of Tongtang Gyalpo, this great yogi of the past in Tibet who would build the bridges over these chasms at the direction of his guru, kind of like Marpa gave instructions to Milarepa. Also, the guru of Tongtang Gyalpo gave him instructions to build these steel chain bridges. So he's often in iconography, often has chains around his body. So the incarnation of Tongtang Gyalpo came to teach us to visit Kopan at the first meditation course I attended, the 7th meditation course in 1974. And Lama Zopa had him speak to us. Lama Zopa translated. And Tongtang Gyalpo told about the time that he was meditating in a cave high in the mountains over a village. Once every couple of months, he would come down to get provisions at the store. You remember me telling you the story? And he was meditating in the cave, within a tent in the cave, just to have a little more warmth, he sensed someone walking around the tent, and a fear rose. Maybe this is a thief or someone who's going to kill me. So he meditated on emptiness. So the fear went away, right? There was no anger or anything. Later, when he came out, there was no one there. The next time he went to the provision store at the bottom of the hill, a couple of months later, the storekeeper asked him, "Oh, did you see the Yeti that was up by your cave?" So in other words, that the implication was that there was a Yeti walking around his tent while he was there. So the meditation on emptiness can prevent you from getting afraid, not only prevent you from getting angry, and so forth. And also, just the sense of your own non-fear. Sometimes the animals or other things will not harm you. Okay, so continuing, the commentary says, so that means Chandrakirti's Bhasham, auto commentary. The grammatical particle to indicates that this too is a cause for forbearance. So there were two kinds of causes, right? The compassion for sentient beings that they're creating negative karma. So does that apply? Does that compassion apply if you are hit by if you are hit by a branch that falls off a tree? Sometimes we get angry, right? You notice that people, they slam the door on their thumb or something like that, and they get angry. It's that having compassion for sentient beings is not going to help because the door or the branch is not a sentient being, right? So it's mainly the emptiness. So the particle two indicates that this too is a cause of forbearance. Their meditation on emptiness, knowing that that which hit you, you yourself, the process of being hit and so forth, are not inherently existent. Not only does the bodhisattva remain undisturbed because of the reason given above, the compassion, he also has great forbearance because of what has just been explained here about emptiness. Also, just before this, in the commentary, the phrase, "for this reason too," should be read as "by seeing thus too." So probably none of you are going to understand what he's talking about because he's talking about a comment in the Madhyamaka Bhasham, which is not translated here. Okay, so in that place, for my translation of the Madhyamaka Bhasham, the auto commentary, right? Chandrakirti's auto commentary. Since he also sees phenomena as similar to reflections and separates from the discrimination of I and mind, he is therefore also very extremely patient. So anyway, it's referring to something which was not translated here. So if you wonder, for this reason too, why that should be translated as "by seeing thus too," it's just referring to the way that it was phrased in the Bhasham, in the auto commentary. Okay. How are we doing? Jim, Mikhail, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay. So next section, how to cultivate other types of forbearance. Remember, we're talking about there are different kinds of forbearance. This has two parts: the inappropriateness of becoming angry and the appropriateness of cultivating patience, forbearance, right? So Jeffrey uses different words here. He says, unsuitability of anger. It resonates a little more with me rather than saying the inappropriateness of anger. Unsuitability, or, it's just stupid to get angry, right? And Jippa says the appropriateness of cultivating forbearance, or as Hopkins says, suitability of observing patience. So it's unsuitable to get angry, it's suitable to practice patience. So first one, the inappropriateness or the unsuitability of anger. This is fourfold. It is good to go through the outlines as a study guide. Once you've studied something, go through all the outlines and try to remember, what was that outline about? Okay, so it is inappropriate or unsuitable to become angry because it is pointless and will have grave consequences. 2, it is contradictory to loathe future suffering, but retaliate against harm. Or for that one, how does he call that here? It is contradiction of not wanting suffering in the future and making harmful response. That's a contradiction. You don't want to have harm in the future, but if you get angry, actually you're creating the karma to have harm in the future. So it's contradiction. 3rd outline, it is inappropriate or unsuitable to become angry because it destroys virtue accumulated in the past over a long period. That's one we're most familiar with, probably. And the 4th outline, rejecting anger on the basis of contemplating the numerous faults of intolerance, or stopping anger by reflecting on the many faults of impatience. Okay, so at this point, if you are really, you really want to put detail into this, there are 2 main sources to look at: Bodhisattvacharya Vatara, the chapter on patience. So that's one of the longest chapters, right? Isn't it? The wisdom chapter may be longer, but when lamas come to the West and they come to a center, Tibetan lamas, one of their favorite things, you may have heard a discourse on the patience chapter of the Bodhisattvacharya Vatara several times. Is that true? Anyone here? Well, okay, maybe one, maybe a couple of people. So that's one of their favorite, because anger is one of the most destructive emotions, right? Klesha. Because not only does it cause you problem now, your face gets red, you're upset, you lose your reputation and so forth. It's just a temporal shortcomings, but it creates negative karma, and it's a double whammy. It destroys virtuous karma. So all of those kind of things are mentioned in that chapter on patience. Now, who came first? Anna, do you know who came first, Chandrakirti or Shantideva?
I thought Shantideva did.
No, Shantideva comes later. Chandrakirti. So Chandrakirti doesn't, neither of them quote the other in their texts, but Chandrakirti, it was well before Shantideva, so his presentation may seem a little more theoretical and dry, and that Shantideva's may seem more poetic and so forth, because he wrote his text he spoke his text as a kind of a poem. So it's good to study that, and also to study the Lanrim Chemo. In the Lanrim Chemo, when it talks about, after developing bodhicitta, then it talks about the perfections in general, and then a big section on the perfections of concentration and wisdom, right? So if you look in there, especially Geshe Zopa's commentary on the perfection of patience, that's also gives you other quotations and other kinds of logics. There they quote, Lanrim Chemo, Lama Tsongkhapa quoted both Chandrakirti and Shantideva in various places. So they're kind of the root sources there. So here, it is inappropriate or unsuitable to become angry because it is pointless, or Jeffrey says senseless, that's senseless, and will have grave consequences. Okay, what does this mean? Not only does forbearance or patience accord with the hearts of the bodhisattvas abiding on the grounds, it is also for others not yet abiding on the grounds the cause of safeguarding all their qualities ensuring that they do not dissipate. What does that mean? Anyone want to take what does that make sense to you, David? That sentence? Are you in meditative equipoise? There you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm trying to find it again.
Not only does, so it's right after this outline that says it is inappropriate to become angry. Not only does forbearance accord with the hearts of bodhisattvas abiding on the grounds, and it says hearts, it says tuk. In Tibetan, tuk is the honorific for sem, mind. So Jeffrey just translates it not only accords with the minds of the bodhisattvas abiding on the grounds, it is also for others not yet abiding on the grounds. That means for other people, other bodhisattvas, path of accumulation, path of preparation, and even ordinary beings before that. Patience is the cause of safeguarding all their qualities, ensuring they do not dissipate. What does that mean that they do not dissipate?
Well, they're setting an example. And I would think that if, they get angry at that point, those that have not yet reached that point, the work that they've put in would be like, well, what's the point? It would dissipate. It would lessen.
All their qualities. Yeah. So one quality we know we talk about is merit. So that would dissipate, but also their good qualities would degenerate because of getting angry and so forth. Okay. So let's see. The lines, if you respond with vengeance, up to cultivate swiftly and constantly the forbearance praised by the Aryas. So this is talking about the verses 4, which is this coming up, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. What is that? 6 verses. So it says, if you respond, the lines, if you respond with vengeance, up to the verse that ends, cultivate swiftly and constantly the forbearance praised by the Aryas. Those 6 verses demonstrate to the impatient, the intolerant, how it is wiser to turn away from anger. So, nowadays there are courses that people have to take if they get in arguments by the court. They have to take, what do they call it? Anger management courses. Yeah. John, have you ever had to take an anger management course? No, I thought you were nodding like you've heard of that. Anyone ever have to take one? Don't be ashamed. Toby, have you ever had to take a anger management course? No, okay. No court appointed. I probably should have in much of my life, getting angry and not realizing the shortcomings. Sometimes people think anger is good. It gets, lets you get rid of that tension and puts the other person in their place and so forth. But if you think about it, it's senseless. Demonstrate to the impatient, the intolerant, how it is wiser to turn away from anger. So here's the first one. If you respond with vengeance or angry, Jeffrey just says, if you get angry with someone, if you respond with vengeance when someone harms you, if you get angry when someone harms you, does your bitterness, does your resentment reverse what was already done? Okay, you got hurt. Someone said harsh words. They beat you. They stole your money. Something. You get angry. Does that anger change the situation that was already done? The harm was already done, right? You can't change that. As Jeffrey says, is that harm stopped? If you get angry with someone who has done you harm, is that harm stopped? What does Jimpa say? Reversed because of your resentment of him? No, right? Resentment or anger serves no purpose here in this life, and it brings more conflicts in the world beyond too. world beyond, you could translate as future lives. When it says, Jikten Chipa, that means future worlds that you will inhabit, your future lives. Okay. So let's go into what's the commentary. Now, if you respond with vengeance or anger when someone harms you, namely, you react with anger toward the perpetrator of that harm. Perpetrator generally is a human, right? But here, you can get angry at the car door or the window that slams down on your hand or something like that. So the agent of the harm. Now, if you respond with vengeance or anger when something harms you, namely you react with anger toward the agent of that harm, does your bitterness or rancor, your resentment against the person, help reverse what was already done? Well, think about it. You have to think about it. It's not going to change the harm that was already done. Why are you getting angry then? You have some other kinds of reasons in your mind. Maybe they deserve to hear what you're saying and so forth, but it doesn't change the harm. No, it does not. Lama Tsongkhapa says, therefore, resentment toward the person serves no purpose here in this life. So you might like to argue, your mind might like to argue, oh no, there is a purpose, because it puts the other person in their place, tells them I won't stand for it again in the future and so forth. But just in terms of reversing the harm, it doesn't do anything. Rancor, or as Jeffrey translates, resentment, is a fierce state of mind that is utterly harsh and has the same meaning as hostility. Jeffrey says, resentment is an irritable, coarse disposition synonymous with belligerence. So if you respond with resentment or belligerence, where are we? Not only is anger pointless, it brings more conflicts with one's own welfare in the world beyond too. By giving license to anger, giving yourself the freedom to get angry, because you're not putting any stops on it. You don't see the disadvantages of it. So you're giving license or freedom to it. One casts oneself into future undesirable effects that will ripen after death, right? So this is only talking about the negative consequences in terms of, let's say, throwing karma or experiencing karma, right? You get angry, that can throw you into the lower realms, that can cause experiences in the future of people getting angry with you. I remember in Dharamsala once when I was walking back to my residence from the library, I was cutting through an Indian village. I don't know if any of you have been in McLeodganj and Dharamsala. So walking through this Indian village, and there was a little baby that was sitting peacefully. And when it saw me, it started crying and bawling, And I thought, well, I didn't do anything. Of course, could be like white face, some stranger, just shocking. But there's no way to experience and affect a result without having created the cause in the past. So I must have, gotten angry or upset with others. It's not that the baby was necessarily angry, but was crying and fearful and so forth. I must have done that myself in the past. Okay, does that make sense? That verse, if you respond with anger when someone harms you, does the bitterness or the resentment that you feel reverse what was already done? the harm that you received, is that reversed? Is that eliminated? You don't feel any harm? No, you still had the harm. Okay, that's one thing. Next one. It is contradictory to loathe future suffering on one hand, but to retaliate against the harm on the other, right? Or as Jeffrey says, contradiction of not wanting suffering in the future and making harmful response. How are those contradictory, right? You don't want to suffer now, and you don't want to suffer in the future, right? You don't want to suffer in the future. So you might think that by retaliating now, the other person won't, they'll be more cautious, oh, don't get near George. You get your head bitten off, or, he might strike you or something like this. You might think that that's a good strategy, but it's creating negative karma, right? So the text says, while enduring miseries that are the fruits of his past misdeeds, the bodhisattva, or a person, and not necessarily talking about a bodhisattva, someone like ourselves, while enduring miseries that are the fruits of our past misdeeds, but being ignorant of this, he who harbors the thought, others have harmed me, will feel anger for the perpetrators of harm. They're harming me, they have harmed me, they will harm me. By retaliating in return for injury, he actually obstructs what he himself wants, which is to no longer experience the sufferings caused by the harms. This is presented in the following. So this is verse 5. We had verse 4 before. He who speaks of exhausting the fruits of non-virtuous actions performed in the past, how can he bear to plant the seeds of future pain by inflicting harm on others and being angry at them? Okay, let's go back. By retaliating in return for injury. So Jeffrey translates that. Let's see, where is he translated? Influenced by that. Some people, when suffering due to former bad deeds, are influenced by their obstruction to think another has harmed me and generate anger toward the harmer. They want to prevent the arising of future suffering that involves such harm in the future by now making a harmful response. They want to, let the other person know, you better not harm me. In order to overcome this tendency, Chandrakirti says this verse. By retaliating in return for injury. How does Jeffrey translate that? When suffering due to former deeds are influenced by their obstruction, they want to prevent the arising of suffering that involves such harm in the future. So here, when Jippa says retaliating in return for injury, what that means is kind of like, what do we say in the world? Tit for tat. You said harsh word to me, I'll say harsh word back to you. You hit me, I'll hit you. You steal from me, I'll steal from you. So that kind of thinking is antithetical to the Bodhisattva's way of thinking, like when we study in the Lojong, in the training of the mind. When someone, I will practice to accept defeats and offer the victory to others when others abuse me. For instance, when others abuse me out of envy and jealousy and so forth. The Bodhisattva in the Lama Chopa Puja, one of the verses that says, talking about the perfection of patience. Let me just read you. I think I have here. Let's see, where is this? This is talking about the glance meditation, right? So in the glance meditation, when you talk about the perfection of patience, you say, Kamsum kegyu malu jugirte, when all of the beings of the three realms, if all of the beings of the three realms were to get angry with me, Sheshing Sangdu Dikshing Sokchokyang, if they were to criticize, seek out my faults, telling other people about my faults, threaten me, Diksupmi is like the symbol that Vajrapani has holding the Vajra, threatening mudra. If they were to threaten me or even kill me, Mituk Nolen Pempa Drupchupe Sope Barchin Sokbar Jinkilo. Please grant me blessings to perfect the practice of patience, which returns benefit in response to other people's harm. When other people harm me, right now my tendency is to want to harm them back, right? But the Bodhisattva, their ethic is to, when others harm you, to actually benefit them in return to their harm, in return to their harm. Say, for instance, I think I told you, Geshe Rapton, the great meditator who was one of the tutors of the Dalai Lama, in this present Dalai Lama's life. Geshe Rapton, when he was at Sarah J, because he was such a workaholic and scholar, other people were jealous and so forth. They talk about him behind his back, which can cause you to be angry, right? When we talk about Lanrim, it said when people talk about you behind your back, that's one of the best ways of purifying negative karma, So instead of retaliating or holding resentment for them, he invited them to his humble little room and offered them what he made, momos. Do you know momos? David, is that your favorite food? One of your favorites, right? Meat momos or spinach momos or cheese momos or vegetable momos. So instead of retaliating in turn, he would actually try to benefit them sincerely, not just sort of like, sarcastically. Rachel, what do you think?
It was about before. So if you're still in the middle of Geshe Rapton's story.
No, go on. I finish that.
So this is all about non-bodhisattvas, because a bodhisattva on the third ground has already perfected this ethics of not harming.
Right.
And so there's no way that there would be this wish to harm someone and have retaliation arising for a bodhisattva.
Right. So if you go back to these, let's see where the outline is. So this is how to cultivate other types of forbearance. So this is talking about even if people are not on the grounds, right? So this is talking about people that might still have the tendency to get angry. The logic, like ourselves, this is advice for ourselves right now that we can apply. Okay. Sean, what do you think?
I was wondering, it seems like you would have to balance that between, because I could think of situations where if you don't hold someone accountable for their actions, then they're just going to harm more people.
Oh, okay. So that's one of the rationales our angry mind has. So it almost looks like you're in a sailboat crossing the Atlantic. Oh no, okay. I thought there were sails above you there.
I'm at a track meet.
Okay. So say for instance, what we call righteous indignation. We think it's right to get angry. at the people who are destroying our environment, who are harming those who are there, they have power over, grabbing them by some part of their body because you're a star or whatever. We might think it's legitimate to get angry, but one has to understand the difference between the bodhisattva strategy to right wrongs and getting angry. Anger is a state of mind that causes the mind to be unclear. Remember, it disturbs the mind. The basic definition of the klesha, kleshas are what we translate as delusions or afflictions, right? Is that which causes the mind's tranquility to be lost and causes the clarity of your mind to see what the correct solution is to disappear. The example I've mentioned many times, like the king's horses, or the cavalry, or whatever you call them, the army on horseback, going through a stream of water, and the hooves of the horses causing the water to be agitated and to bring up the mud, right? Afterwards, after that episode of them running through there, analogous to an angry episode, the water is disturbed. So the anger causes your mind to be uncalm, and also the delusions, like the mud comes up from the bottom, other kinds of inappropriate ways of thinking arise. So the bodhisattva doesn't get angry, but still can feel, the need to try to right a situation. But anger is not the way to do it, because when you're in an angry state, your mind is uncalm, so you're ready to reach out. Other delusions come, and you're ready to punch or kill or do something inappropriate. Okay, does it make sense?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so the commentary says, now with respect to those great sufferings inflicted by one's enemies and so on, that injure one's body, for someone who speaks of his wish to exhaust the fruits of non-virtuous actions performed in the past, such as taking a life, the consequences of which are the severe fruitional effects of the three lower realms, as well as encountering all the undesirable, causally concordant effects. How can he, such a person, bear once again to plant the seeds of future pain? So that's really torturous. And there's a little error both in his translation and in Jeffrey's translation. Here, Jeffrey's translated, the great suffering that enemies inflict on one's body is an effect of the non-virtuous action of killing one did in the past. Okay, violent actions. That effect can be experienced as a strong fruition in the three bad migrations, and also those for whom the effects still remain after a lifetime in mad migration undergo unpleasantness by way of fruits similar to that cause upon rebirth as a human. Remember, when you create some heavy negative karma, a path of action could throw you into the lower realms, but then when you're born as a human, you have either 2 or 3 kinds of remaining results. Depends on how you divide it. You can so as the effects similar to the cause and the environmental effect. The effect similar to the cause has 2. The effect similar to the cause as an action, and the effects or results similar to the cause as a experience. So here the problem is in this translation, they're talking about how could it be right for one wishing to assert that he is finishing the effects of non-virtuous actions done earlier. Or Jimpa says, he who speaks of exhausting the fruits of non-virtuous actions performed in the past. I think both of those translations are wrong. Dzongzar Khenzo Rinpoche gave a commentary on Bodhisattva Charyottara, very, very short, but his translation, I think, of this verse is closer. The result of earlier non-virtuous action is regarded as having been called purification or exhaustion, then in parentheses, by the Buddha. So it's not talking about that we are asserting that we are finishing off the effects of non-virtue. What this verse is saying, that the Buddha, as you know, has said that when you experience negative karma, that can be regarded, you could regard that as the exhaustion of your past negative deeds, right? If you're skillful. Say, for instance, in Lama Chopa, after the verse that has 5 lines about Tonglen, Dana Lama Tukche, Lama Tukche Chen, O compassionate Guru, please grant me blessings to take on all the suffering of all mother sentient beings right now, here and now, and send out all my virtuous karma and so forth. You know that verse. So right after that, there's a verse that says, if the world and the inhabitants therein are filled with the effects of our past negative actions, and undesired suffering falls like rain, right? It sounds, sometimes it seems like that, right? Please grant me blessings to take these adverse conditions into the path by seeing them as the exhaustion of my past negative deeds. That's talking about here. So the Buddha said that if we are intelligent, we will see that when negative things happen to us, it's not the fault of the other person. It's not the fault of the car that the person was driving that hit us, or the words or so forth. It is our own fault. We created the negative karma in the past for this, and now, having experienced that, it's gone. It's exhausted, or there might still be some residual effects of it left, but we've exhausted that. So if we don't retaliate with anger or, striking back and so forth, we're better off than we were before. Now that's gone. Why? What sense is there to get to, to strike out? So that's how I think this should be read. How could it be right for one who has understood the Buddha's teaching that the effects of non-virtuous actions are now extinguished or exhausted? How could it be right for for the exhaustion of actions done earlier? How could it be right to sow the seeds of suffering through harming and hating others? Does that make sense to you? Yeah. Nadine, what do you think?
Thank you so much. I tried to take some notes because it's really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So this particular verse, both Hopkins and Jimpa take it. To me, it doesn't make any sense the way they say. How could it be right for one wishing to assert? In Tibetan, it says sepa chepa chopa dopa deni ko. It actually fits with Dzongzar Khenzo Rinpoche's interpretation that it is regarded or asserted. De doesn't mean wishing all the time. So in debate, we talk about dupa as meaning an assertion, your position. So that, how could it be right, knowing what the Buddha said, that negative karma is exhausted when you experience harm? How could it be right then to create more harm? Knowing that, how could it be right to create more harm by retaliating? Okay. How can he, such a person, bear once again to plant the seeds of future pain? How can he or she, how can they, by inflicting harm on others in retaliation, and by being angry at them, with anger churning from the depths, how can they lead themselves into misery that is greater even than what they currently experience? So they've already received some harm. Knowing, if you knew that was exhausting your negative karma, how could it make sense then to create the cause of even greater harm in the future? Again, being reborn in hell, again, have these kinds of consequences, maybe even greater. This would be illogical. Therefore, just as one endures pain inflicted by a physician, such as with the sharp needle. The word needle is not there. This kind of mean like scalpel or something, if you have a boil, the doctor, your mom or someone cuts it with a scalpel, or you could say maybe a needle, the abscess or something, it's kind of painful. Therefore, just as one endures pain inflicted by a physician, such as with a sharp needle or a scalpel, to help cure an illness, likewise to avert limitless future sufferings, it is most appropriate to have forbearance toward immediate minor suffering. So, for instance, if you are told you've got gangrene in your leg, it has festered. What's it called when you start getting these very severe infections? You know what I'm talking about? Sepsis. It has gone septic. You're going to die, or we can cut off your leg, right? Or we can cut off your finger that's become gangrene and is now septic. You put up with what otherwise you wouldn't do, the suffering of having your finger or your leg or your arm cut off, in order to prevent a much greater suffering. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to call Sean in a minute, but just let me read you something here. In the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, chapter 7, which is in perseverance, actually, starting with verse 22, it says, "Yet the suffering involved in my awakening will have a limit." You're thinking, oh, achieving enlightenment is going to take so long, so many things I got to give away my body and so forth. It is like the suffering of having an incision made in order to remove and destroy a greater pain. Or as Alan Wallace translates that verse, however, this limited suffering of mind which yields perfect awakening is like the suffering of extraction when removing the pain of an embedded splinter. Maybe that's from the Sanskrit, it has the word splinter. Next verse says, even doctors eliminate illness with unpleasant medical treatments. Sometimes you have to drink, Chinese medicine. Jennifer's not here. I think that Jennifer and John were in the car traveling. That was the telephone connection before. They're not listening. So sometimes, the Chinese medicines that are so distasteful, but it's going to benefit you, or some other kinds of pills you have to take. Even doctors eliminate illness with unpleasant medical treatments. So in order to overcome manifold sufferings, I should be able to put up with some discomfort. And the next verse says, but the supreme physician, who's that? medical Buddha. It means the Buddha, the omniscient mind, the supreme physician, does not employ common medical treatments such as these. With an extremely gentle technique, he remedies all the greatest ills. Sean, what's your thought?
I was just wondering if you could comment on the situation that I see a lot where because the text talked about the bodhisattvas reflecting on the hell realms as kind of a motivation for all this. But in non-Buddhist world, I see this used as an excuse to where they end up harming people because they think, well, I'm going to keep them from going to hell by keeping them from doing some action that they disagree with. For example, like the evangelicals with the LGBT community right now.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So the difference, like say, when the bodhisattva was the captain or a member of the crew, the other person was going to scuttle the boat, kill everyone in order to get the treasure. The Buddha realized with his clairvoyance that there was no other way to change that person's mind, that they were going to do this. So the Buddha actually took his life or harmed him. So in contradistinction to the to the people in Mississippi or wherever else that are want to harm the LGB. What is it? What are the correct initials? LGBTQT. Is there another letter in that compendium? I don't know all of those things. Maybe you.
There is a plus sign also after that.
Plus, okay. So, in order to prevent them from creating great sins, those people don't have the clairvoyance to know what those individuals are going to experience because of their behavior. They don't have not real compassion. Anyway, there's a difference there. So this is a good place to stop. Right here, this next outline. It is inappropriate to become angry because it destroys virtues accumulated in the past over a long period. Let me just see, add a note. So what page is this on in Jimpa's text?
133.
133. So that's for next time. And in Hopkins' text?
208.
208. Okay. So this is where we're going to start next time. Didn't take on my thing here for some reason. Highlight. Okay, doesn't work. Okay, I'll have to do it later. So read ahead. We've posted, Doris kindly posted on Facebook 2 quotations that are coming in the next section. A quote from the Great Lion's Roar of Maitreya, with some additional verses. When sometimes they give one verse, Chandrakirti or Lama Khapa gives one verse, I'd like to read the verse before and the verse after to see the context. And another from the miraculous play of Manjushri, very, very famous quotation. If you download those, you can read ahead. And we're going to have a break next week, right? Next week, there's no class. We'll begin the week after that again with another 8-week segment. Hopefully, I think before the break in August, we may just be at the 6th chapter, the wisdom chapter. So if you read ahead and clarify your doubts, maybe you won't have as many questions in class and we can go a little bit faster. Okay, so any last question right now before we finish? Okay. Doris, how are you feeling? Your legs are okay? Up and down, okay. Your body is suffering, but your mind is at ease, okay. Okay, so Shankar, would you like to put up the dedication prayers? We're going to go down to the dedication. Due to these virtues, Gewadi, may I quickly, Nirdudag, attain the state of a Guru Buddha, Lama Sangye Chubyurne, and lead all migrators without exception into that enlightened state. So think of the meaning of that, dedicating the merits that we've created. We had a good motivation at the beginning. We've created virtuous karma. Thinking, may that become the cause of my eventual achievement quickly, quick achievement, maybe even through Tantra, of achieving the state of Buddhahood, from which state I can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error lead all sentient beings out of suffering into that stable, same state of enlightenment. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta, the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen in me now, may these merits become the cause for that bodhicitta to arise and grow, and may that which has arisen, that which I already have some inkling of, not diminish, but increase more and more. And then at the, we'll say this one first. For all spiritual friends, you who are eyes for my ability to view all the infinite scriptures, the supreme gateway for those who are fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by mercy and love, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. And this prayer that His Holiness has composed, peerless teacher, an assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, that means Losang Drakpa, Lama Tsongkhapa, father and sons, together with your lineage, all the objects of refuge of the infinite lands, please now bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer, that this prayer would be accomplished. In holding and in spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, you, Lama Zopa, through explanation and practice, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, I make this request. Soul gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings, the conqueror's teachings, that means the Buddhist teachings, as well as for the welfare of mother's living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. At this, I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth, the infallible truth of the blessings, the oceanic blessings of the three jewels, and the great waves of the bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, the mind generation of the conqueror's children, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. So this is a prayer, but also a dedication, thinking may these merits overcome any hindrances on the part of myself and disciples to the quick recognition of the reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you. I'll see Rachel and Mikhail in the Dharma hour, I think. Monday, we have our discussion group, and also at 12:30, another session of Tara prayers for the quick return of Lama Zopa. So Look forward to seeing you soon. Take
Thank
care.
you, Venerable
Thank
George.
you